So in 2016, we saw the release of the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim Special Edition. And now, all these years later, we have the remaster of the Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion. But how do these games stack up against each other when it comes to attention to detail? So guys, welcome to this direct comparison of the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim versus the Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion Remastered. Skyrim and Oblivion being two of my all-time favorite games of all time. I mean, I got a Oblivion stuff hanging here, I got Oblivion here. I absolutely love this franchise, so I've been really looking forward to finally doing this direct comparison of Skyrim versus the newly remastered Oblivion. I hope you guys enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it for you guys, and if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any future content. But guys, let's dive into the video. So diving right in with a comparison of the two games as worlds, and in Skyrim, its fantasy open world is very Norse-esque, with a lot of Viking inspiration in all of the architecture in the game's towns and villages. While in Oblivion Remastered, the theme is that of more of a traditional European high fantasy RPG, with stone castles dotting the landscape and iron-clad knights patrolling the roads. Both of these aesthetics are great in their own way, but when it comes down to which one is better, it's honestly going to come down to personal preference. But when it comes down to the character that you're actually playing as between these two games, they couldn't be much more different, whereas in Skyrim, you play as the Jesus Christ Dragonborn character, and the world and the story both revolve around you, whereas in Oblivion, you actually play as more of a witness to the main story. You have a big part to play in it, but you are not the main character, as that character is actually Martin Septim. And I always thought that was kind of cool, because when the history books are written about the Oblivion Crisis, the hero is Martin Septim, whereas you are the champion of Cyrodiil, and you have your own part to play, but you're not the main character of the story, and I think that makes this game's story kind of unique. And moving on now to what is honestly one of the biggest gameplay differences between these two games, and it actually has to do with how enemies spawn, because in Skyrim, the world feels a bit more alive than what we see in Oblivion, because all of the enemy types, with the exception of dragons, spawn pretty much right out the gate. As a level 1, if you wander into the wrong spot, you could be fighting a frost troll, or even a giant, and get your ass kicked, whereas in Oblivion and Oblivion Remastered, the enemies actually have a bit more of a level scaling system, to where if you're a low-level character, you're only going to be fighting low-level creatures, such as rats, or mud crabs, whereas when you level up in Oblivion, you'll start to fight bigger and larger creatures, whereas in Skyrim, you can be running into these larger creatures right out the gate. And speaking of enemies, the melee combat between Oblivion Remastered and Skyrim isn't really all that much different than what you might think, because in Oblivion Remastered, they actually did add a lot of new animations for NPCs reacting to melee hits, and whereas in the original Oblivion, they didn't react all that much to getting hit. Not to mention, there's new animations for weapon combos, which look really cool, and it kind of closes the gap between what melee combat felt like in the original Oblivion and what we see in Skyrim, whereas obviously in Skyrim, the enemies do react to getting hit and things like that. But you also can't rule out the fact that Skyrim still has those slow motion awesome execution kills, which are still awesome to see even after all these years. And now that we've talked about combat, we have to talk about how skills and leveling up are different between Skyrim and Oblivion, and I've always complained that Skyrim getting rid of major skills was a mistake, because in Skyrim, it doesn't matter which skill you increase, it'll contribute towards your next level, which at the end of the day makes your character and my character exactly the same once we all increase our skills up to level 100, because we're all jacks of all trades, whereas in Oblivion, the original Oblivion, your only way you could level up is if you increased one of your 7 major skills, and I think that was cool, because it made your character and my character different from one another. And in Oblivion Remastered, though they still have the 7 major skills, they changed it to make it more like Skyrim, to where even if you increase a minor skill, it still contributes towards your level, and I don't really like that, because just like I said, the same with Skyrim, what's the point of having 7 major skills if you can still increase your level off of a minor skill? And it kind of takes away some of our character's identity, and I wish they didn't do that in Oblivion Remastered. And moving right along, I always think it's interesting to see how open worlds handle lighting, and in Oblivion Remastered, I think this looks fantastic. Fires in the environment actually put off realistic looking lighting, and I can actually see the glow of this fire from pretty far away, which is pretty cool. Whereas in the original release of Skyrim, and even the special edition, I've always felt like the lighting in this game was pretty subpar, whereas even a torch going through like a pitch black area doesn't really illuminate the darkness at all, or even huge campfires in the environment don't really put off any light, and it just makes the lighting in the world feel a bit stagnant, which kind of sucks, because even an ugly game with good lighting can look pretty great. And now we're moving on to a comparison of the fire spell effects between these two games, and in Skyrim, as you can see, whenever I use a fire spell in the environment, it actually burns and chars the environment black, and it looks great. I've always loved the way this looks, and the charred effect in the environment actually lasts for a very long time. Whereas in Oblivion Remastered, and though it looks leaps and bounds past what we saw in the original Oblivion in 2006, I do love the improvements where actually you can see the heat waves coming off of the spot where the fire spell hit, and it does char it and burn it black for a little while, though it does disappear pretty quickly. Which leads us to a comparison of the ice spell effects between the two games, and in Oblivion Remastered, just like the fire spells, the ice spells do look much more impressive than what we saw in the original Oblivion, and I love that you can actually see little ice crystal shards rolling on the ground after you cast an ice spell, and just like with the fire spells, the effect of the ice does linger for a little bit, but it disappears pretty quickly. While in Skyrim, whenever you use ice spells, I've always felt it looks fantastic. I love how your ice spells actually freeze the geometry in the environment into solid ice. I love the white glow of the frost effects. It looks great. And though we don't really have those crystal shards rolling around the ground like we saw in Oblivion Remastered, I've always felt like this is a great effect, and it looks great even today. And with our next comparison, I want to talk about some of the differences between how talking to NPCs works between the two games, because in Oblivion, whenever you start a conversation, it actually freezes the world around you, as you can see by this guy in the background who has been stopped mid-blink, which is kind of funny. Obviously, this is due to the technical limitations of the original Oblivion, which carries over into the remastered, though sometimes it can be kind of funny. Whereas in Skyrim, whenever you engage an NPC in a conversation, the world does not freeze around you. The world and its characters continue on as you have your conversation, and it makes the game world feel so much more alive, and it's one of those huge game improvements over Oblivion that Skyrim had that Skyrim players I feel like have just gotten used to, and honestly, kind of take for granted. And with our next comparison, you guys know I love comparing water effects in games, so here we are in Oblivion Remastered, and I've always felt Bethesda games have really great looking water effects, though I did find some interesting differences when testing the buoyancy of the same items between both games. So here we are in Oblivion Remastered, and as you can see, when I drop this heavy weapon into the water, it sinks straight down to the bottom, though when I tested it with this elven bow, it also sank straight down to the bottom. Whereas in Skyrim, as you can expect, the water effects still look great, though when testing these same items when it came to buoyancy, the heavy weapon of course sinks straight down, whereas the elvish bow, instead of sinking, actually floats along the surface, which I thought was kind of interesting. And with my final comparison in this video, I always think it's fun to compare the free fall death effects of games. So here we are in Oblivion Remastered, jumping off this cliff, and as you can see, I survived. What can I say? My dude's super healthy. But eventually, as I bounce my way down this mountain, eventually I will die, and as you can see, I just kind of ragdoll, and it's kind of funny. Whereas in Skyrim, whenever I try this exact same thing, I die much quicker, though in Skyrim, he does this little spinning dance move that he always does, and I don't know, I always kind of thought that was funny, but yeah, there it is. Well guys, you made it to the end. Thank you for watching this direct comparison of the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim versus the newly remastered Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. I absolutely adore both these games, and I hope you guys enjoyed this direct comparison as much as I enjoyed making it for you guys. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. You made it all the way to the end of the video. What are you doing? But either way, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. See you.